their whole world has been turned upside down. What the good that has come out, well, it's not really good, but the effect has been, what has happened in the northern Amazon is that now the indigenous in the eastern part of the country and the southern part of the Amazon are totally opposed to not only oil development, but any type of extractive industry. In the north, there's a lot of hope that the people are going to prevail in the end in this legal case, and that they will cause it will force Chevron to clean up. So we're working for justice in the north and preservation in the south. And if I could, I just want to read a couple of, one of the great things we were able to do in the book is that along with the photographs, we interviewed people both in the north and the south. And so we have what they are experiencing in their own words, which I think is really great. It's not very often. I mean, I'm a photojournalist, documentary photographer. I worked for many years. I'm a former conflict photographer. I covered wars. I worked for many years showing people what is happening in different parts of the world. But usually we're interpreting things, even if you're a writer, you're interpreting what people are telling you or what the situation is, but it's not that often we get to actually hear their own words. And in this book we're able to do that. I think we have a total of about 20 first-person testimonies, and the book is entirely bilingual. It's English and Spanish. So if it's okay, I'm going to read one testimony from the north, where the oil development was, and then one from the south, southern part of the Amazon, where for 11 years, 12 years now, they've been united in the south, and they've kept the oil companies. There's oil on the land, but they've kept the oil companies out. And the current political situation in Ecuador is the current president has said if any indigenous group has oil on their land and they do not want it developed, the government will not develop it. So at least for the present time, of course governments change and things change, but at least for the present time, it's a very good situation after years and years of struggle.
Given the CIA a deadline now.
What's that?
Given the CIA a deadline.
Yeah, Ecuador is really weird because they were flying, actually the Ecuadorian president is now making them leave, but the United States had an air base in Ecuador, and they were doing the drug monitoring flights out of Ecuador over Colombia and Peru. Okay, this is from the village of San Pablo, which is this village I told you I went to. We brought the tuna to in 1993. The Sequoia people have always lived in a healthy environment. When Texaco came to the Amazon, they brought many machines, things we had never seen before. They used dynamite and drilling machines on our lands. They drilled wells and set off dynamite next to our people's houses. It was a totally different world for us. Keep in mind, these are people that hadn't seen machines. They hadn't seen machinery of any type. We began to live in a world very different from before, with noise, big machines, and oil spills and petroleum waste products. The oil companies penetrated areas of the Amazon where even the Sequoia people had never been before. One of the biggest cultural impacts of the oil development was the contamination of the rivers and the fish. Many people suffer from skin rashes and inflamed glands, and some, like my grandfather, have cancer. I hope that the Sequoia people will flourish, that we can live in a healthy, uncontaminated environment. Also, to maintain our culture, we need to teach our children Sequoia traditions. If I could say something to Texaco, I'd tell them they've destroyed our culture and our environment here in the Amazon, and they should admit this. We are a minority group and they should help us. They have damaged our lands and rivers, they've contaminated the air, and they should clean it up. Texaco should think of the sequoias as people, that we are human beings, not animals. They should stop denying everything, and they ought to compensate us for the damage they've done to our lands, because we've lived in the Amazon for thousands of years. So these are people that they are fighting for their cultural society, their cultural existence, and they are fighting for justice. And they've had a tremendous impact on the people of the South. And I have a picture here. This is Sabina Walinga, who is the shaman of Sariaku village in the southern Amazon. Sariaku is this lead linchpin village that for 12 years has, when they've had to use force of arms, they've done that, but basically it's been a nonviolent resistance to keep the oil companies out. And it's an area that if that happened to go, the whole southern region would go. But I interviewed Sabino and his daughter. When I was a child, this is Sabino, when I was a child, I used to go walking alone. On these walks, I would never see people. There was nothing but animals and birds. The forest is sacred. Here we have pure air and flowers. It's a good life. Some years earlier, Shell oil had come to the region. They didn't find commercial quantities of oil, but they did a lot of exploration. When Shell arrived, this is still Sabina, when Shell arrived, they began to cut trees and plants to construct a runway without regard for the medicinal or commercial value of the forest. They felled medicinal trees, medicinal plants, as well as trees that we use for wood and canoes. After Shell, the other companies came. This is his daughter, Patricia. Absolutely fantastic woman and a real leader of her community. Sariaku has never believed in their promises. Sariaku had already seen what had occurred in northern Ecuador with the oil companies there. It was a warning to us. And aside from this, Sariaku has an intimate relationship with the world through our cosmology. So we began to think, what were the consequences of the oil drilling? What would happen to the creatures of the lakes and the mountains? What would happen to our daughters and our young men? All the consequences were negative, and so our indigenous assembly decided, no, in Sariaku territory, we will not allow oil drilling. And I'll end with that. But the final thing I'll say of my experience of traveling both in the north and the south is, and this is among the people that most of them have not traveled outside of the Amazon region, the feeling that they have to preserve the rainforest and preserve the environment, they have an incredible understanding that it's not just important for them, it is important for the entire world. They really have a connectedness with us, with me. They could accept me, and they understood that their preservation of the environment was not just for them, but was really for humanity. And it's a very empowering and very hopeful and strong feeling.